I left the loud lobby and stood outside on the white steps, looking at the hundreds of powdered bugs wheeling around the lamps in the soggy black night, full of ripple and stir. All I would do, all I would dare to do, would amount to such a trifle. Suddenly I was aware that in the darkness next to me there was somebody sitting in a chair on the pillared porch. I could not really see him, but what gave him away was the rasp of a screwing off, then a discreet gurgle, then the final note of a placid screwing on. I was about to move away when his voice addressed me. "Where the devil did you get her?" "I beg your pardon?" I said, "The weather's getting better." "Seems so." "Who's the lassie?" "My daughter." "You lie, she's not." "I beg your pardon?" "I said your lie was hot. Where's her mother?" "Dead." "I see. Sorry. By the way, why don't you two lunch with me tomorrow? That dreadful crowd will be gone by then. We'll be gone too. Good night. Sorry, I'm pretty drunk. Good night. That child of yours needs lots of sleep. Sleep as a rose, as the Persians say. Smoke?" Not now." He struck a light, but because he was drunk, or because the wind was, the flame illumined not him but another person, a very old man, one of those permanent guests of old hotels, and his white rocker. Nobody said anything, and the darkness returned to its initial place. Then I heard the old-timer cough and deliver himself of some sepulchral mucus. I left the porch. At least half an hour in all had elapsed. I ought to have asked for a sip. The strain was beginning to tell. If a violin string can ache, then I was that string. But it would have been unseemly to display any hurry. As I made my way through a constellation of fixed people in one corner of the lobby, there came a blinding flash, and beaming Dr. Braddock, two orchid ornamentalized matrons, the small girl in white, and presumably the bared teeth of Humbert Humbert, sidling between the bride-like lassie and the enchanted cleric, were immortalized. In so far as the texture and print of small-town newspapers can be deemed immortal. A twittering group had gathered near the elevator. I again chose the stairs. 342 was near the fire escape. One could still, but the key was already in the lock, and then I was in the room. The door of the lighted bathroom stood ajar. In addition to that, a skeleton glow came through the Venetian blind from the outside arc lights. These intercrossed rays penetrated the darkness of the bedroom and revealed the following situation. Clothed in one of her old nightgowns, my Lolita lay on her side with her back to me, in the middle of the bed. Her lightly veiled body and bare limbs formed a Z. She had put both pillows under her dark tousled head. A band of pale light crossed her top vertebrae. I seemed to have shed my clothes and slipped into pyjamas with the kind of fantastic instantaneousness which is implied when in a cinematographic scene the process of changing is cut. And I had already placed my knee on the edge of the bed when Lolita turned her head and stared at me through the striped shadows. Now this was something the intruder had not expected. The whole pill spiel, rather a sordid affair, entre nous soit dit, had for object a fastness of sleep that a whole regiment would not have disturbed. And here she was staring at me and thickly calling me Barbara. Barbara, wearing my pyjamas, which were much too tight for her, remained poised motionless over the little sleep-talker. Softly, with a hopeless sigh, Dolly turned away, resuming her initial position. For at least 2 minutes I waited and strained on the brink, like that tailor with his homemade parachute 40 years ago when about to jump from the Eiffel Tower. Her faint breathing had the rhythm of sleep. Finally, I heaved myself onto my narrow margin of bed, stealthily pulled at the odds and ends of sheets piled up to the south of my stone-cold heels, and Lolita lifted her head and gaped at me. As I learned later from a helpful pharmaceutist, the purple pill did not even belong to the big and noble family of barbiturates. And though it might have induced sleep in a neurotic who believed it to be a potent drug, it was too mild a sedative to affect for any length of time a wary, albeit weary, nymphette. Whether the Ramsdale doctor was a charlatan or a shrewd old rogue does not and did not really matter. What mattered was that I had been deceived. When Lolita opened her eyes again, I realized that whether or not the drug might work later in the night, the security I had relied upon was a sham one. Slowly her head turned away, and dropped onto her unfair amount of pillow. I lay quite still on my brink, peering at her rumpled hair, at the glimmer of nymphette flesh, where half a haunch and half a shoulder dimly showed, and trying to gauge the depth of her sleep by the rate of her respiration. Some time passed. Nothing changed, and I decided I might risk getting a little closer to that lovely and maddening glimmer. But hardly had I moved into its warm purlieus than her breathing was suspended, and I had the odious feeling that little Dolores was wide awake and would explode in screams if I touched her with any part of my wretchedness. Please, reader, no matter your exasperation with the tender-hearted, morbidly sensitive, infinitely circumspect hero of my book, do not skip these essential pages. Imagine me. I shall not exist if you do not imagine me. Try to discern the doe in me, trembling in the forest of my own iniquity. Let's even smile a little. After all, there's no harm in smiling. For instance, I had no place to rest my head, and a fit of heartburn, they call those fries French, grand Dieu, was added to my discomfort. She was again fast asleep, my nymphette, but still I did not dare launch upon my enchanted voyage. La petite dormeuse, ou l'amant ridicule. Tomorrow I would stuff her with those earlier pills that had so thoroughly numbed her mummy, in the glove compartment or in the Gladstone bag. Should I wait a solid hour and then creep up again? The science of nympholepsy is a precise science. Actual contact would do it in 1 second flat. An interspace of a millimetre would do it in 10. Let us wait.